The hell? Welcome to Beerfield. I am your host, Chris Hopper, Beerfield Hop, joined by Dan Thury, Beerfield Thury. It is our 5th annual Fuelies episode. For those that aren't familiar with the Fuelies, we'll explain those in a minute. Dan, long day?
It's been a day. I've been up since 4 p.m. Central Time, or 4 a.m. Central Time. I had to drive 3 hours to my site and then 3 hours back home. So it's been a day. It's been a day, but the beer, and this is one of my favorite episodes of the year because there's literally no research outside of talking about coaches being fired and rumors that we get to just laugh and talk about the season that just fucking happened and the shit show that it was.
6 months are like my favorite episodes of the year. If we could just bottle this 6 months that we're about to go through, maybe even 7 that we're about to go through, and just repeat it twice, I'd be totally down for that.
Yep, exactly.
Before we go forward, not before we go, but before we move on forward, again, at Beerfield Hop for me, I'm currently working through some Dynasty Breakdowns of each team, so if you're not following me on Twitter, go give me a follow, find out what I think about players. Working through the AFC East right now. Some of you have probably seen this. Beerfield Thury, Dan, always interacting and giving people some information. And if you want an occasional tweet from the show, Beerfield.
Occasional tweet.
Yeah.
If only I would sign into the show account, the show, and always, link the live stream on the actual show account. But
yeah,
that creates a lot of extra work. So
every now and again we do things to help promote. Most of the time we don't.
I blame Nick.
I blame Nick for a lot. It's all right. We're a year from getting him back.
That's true. Spoiler alert to people that have been listening for this long. Nick's might come back
in a year. Maybe.
He misses us.
I think he does.
I think he really misses the edge that we get during the draft season.
I think he does too. That's honestly the thing that if I've ever thought about quitting, that I think I would miss most would have been the draft break. That I would miss most would be the draft breakdowns and analysis.
Yeah,
it really is the best time of year. I actually got up for doing some dynasty analysis and stuff too. So found some interesting things. I'll probably be doing some articles about that. Spoiler alert.
Ooh,
wink,
spoiler
wink,
alert.
nudge, nudge.
I like how you just like edge that in there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put some articles up. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge over the computer.
Yeah, we'll get there as soon as our lazy ass IT guy gets to work.
I know that guy just literally
it's me. I'm the lazy.
Doesn't do anything, but he does everything.
That's me. I'm very good at that. Not doing anything, but doing everything.
Again, this is why I blame Nick.
Look,
he's always in charge.
If you want to find the most efficient way to get something done, ask the laziest person that still cares to do it. The laziest, most intelligent person in the room will find the most efficient way to do something. As long
especially if they're motivated to be as lazy as possible.
That's right. They'll find the easiest way to do it.
It's like, God, I gotta fucking do this. Hold on.
Well, they'll spend more time finding an easier way to do it than they would doing it the tedious way.
Yeah, but God damn it, they found the quickest way to do it.
Yep. Once they started. Anyway, Fuelies, it's our super original idea. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because we definitely ripped the idea off from the footies. But at the same time, I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I don't remember seeing this in years past, but now there's I saw no less than 9 people doing award shows this week. So this is our 5th annual. I'm sure that these other guys have been doing them too. They're newer followers for me. But this is our 5th annual. We'll go through, hand out some awards. Some of them are fun. Some of them are serious. And then, as always, the prestigious Golden Handcuffs award. That's one of the fun ones that really isn't fun, but we make fun of it. And we got
Yeah.
we got some Black Monday stuff for you too. So, yeah, I think we're just gonna hit beer and then Black Monday. We could talk about Antonio Brown, but I don't really want to.
No, we're good.
In the saga that's been, I think we're good there.
I agree.
What's fueling Beer Fueled?
So before we jump into beer, I don't know if, because we're very unprofessional. We check our phones. Sleeper notification. A.J. Dillon donated $35,000 of fantasy football earnings that he got from the Super Bowl annual to a local nonprofit. First off, shout out to A.J. Dillon winning the Sleeper Bowl league that he was a part of with a bunch of, in the know guys from the community, including Scott Fish and Ryan McDowell. And I believe the Ballers were in there. So very cool thing. I love seeing athletes being a part of this, community and really, taking it to heart. Austin Eckler does a show with the Podfather. So I think it's, better for football that it, especially better for the community. It's as long as we're not, sending death threats, because there's
you'd be good to the players. The players will be good to you.
Yeah, it's good to see them embrace it. So I wanted to shout that out. Sorry.
A.J. Dillon and Austin Eckler are pretty much universally loved by the fantasy community. So
yeah, and you get some of the lesser known guys. Oh my God, the backup for Tennessee, the rookie last year, running back.
Oh, Darrington Evans.
Darrington Evans. He's also pretty big in the community. He does a lot more gaming, but he's really interactive with a lot of the fantasy space too. So
yeah, cool. No, that's
God.
It's
what
awesome.
A great finish to the show.
It's always good to see them interact. I have not seen it yet. I'm still.
Are you still working through
it? Yeah. So we do this thing. We get off on tangents on this show, by the way.
Yeah, we do.
We do this thing where we and I'm sure this is not abnormal, but we don't binge watch a full series of something when we decide to start it. We binge watch 3 seasons, and then we'll start something else, and then we'll come back and do a night of binging, and then we'll go away for a bit, and then we'll come back and do maybe 2 nights of binging. So it takes us forever to get through anything.
That's
so fair. That's kind of why 9 is still I think we're in 4 or 5 seasons in, so we still got a couple to get through.
We started it a long time ago, and we got through the first. I want to say the first 6. We went back and rewatched 6. Mm-hmm. And then we just finished it. We've been burning through shows. We've been extra quarantined with the honeymoon coming up. So a lot more television has been watched.
We also watch TV once every 3 weeks too, so that doesn't help.
Yeah. No, I mean, you guys have an excuse. You have a living
kid,
breathing,
a bunch of shit we're trying to keep together outside of that. It's I might get time to sit down and watch TV twice a month, other than sports.
No. So. Oh my God. I don't know what we do. Anyways.
Anyway.
All right. I am, because at the Fuelies episode every year, I like to break out some of the fun stuff for it. I've actually, outside of one bourbon that I haven't opened up yet, because I'm saving it for when you, me, and Brad link up. Mm-hmm. I got into, I've drank them all. So I got last year's Bourbon County. This is the number 4. So this is
nice.
This is the mocha, roasted nuts, sweet maple, and a touch of blueberry. So if anyone out there is familiar with with 4 hands, think of single origins. It's kind of similar to that. A heavier stout that's got hints of maple and blueberry part of it. This is obviously Bourbon County, so it's aged in bourbon barrels and stuff to like. So this was the last of the variants from last year. And for those of you who do not know, you should try not to hold on to any adjunct-heavy stouts or porters for longer than a year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, not to say that they won't fall off, but adjuncts, especially coffee, vanilla, and any fruits, will fall off quickly. So you want to be able to experience what it actually supposed to be. So just a little tidbit out there for those that are aging bottles for a long time.
It's a good call out, especially for Bourbon County, because people will buy those and sit on them for years at a time. Some of those variants you got to be careful doing that with. Like the cola's fine; it's not adjuncted, but
yeah,
for this year there are some others that you don't want to do that with, and every year there's some others that you don't want to do that with.
And then generally always do something with some sort of fruit, generally dark fruit, obviously, and you'll see some other random shit be added. I actually had an orange chocolate one from 2018 last year that still drank fine. I was very surprised.
Yeah. All right. I have narrow gauge. So I have St. Ferdinand's. I have the Old Town Porter. I couldn't read the black. So narrow gauge, very popular brewery out of St. Louis. They don't distribute, but if you're ever here, because there's like an airport here and some other things, so St. Louis isn't as weird of a place to be as say Springfield, just on a whim. Shoot up to Florissant and check them out, because they're pretty much nationally renowned for their IPAs and their hazies. But we're going a little different route this go around. We've got, like I said, Old Town Porter. So it's a porter basically. It's a Baltic, I think. Can't read. Robust. Sorry.
Robust.
So Baltics and Robust, kind of the same thing, where you just end up with the higher ABV, more or less. So there's a Robust Porter. Full review on that in between Black Monday and the Fuelies, and I believe we have some Black Monday. I still have these old drops on the board, so I'm just going to use them. I have no idea what they are, though.
Ooh, fun.
Black Monday.
That's fitting.
You must have made that one after we stopped using actual like sound bites and stuff. I was hoping it'd be like, it'd be like My Chemical Romance, like the Black Parade,
well,
something like. I don't remember. Like I know we haven't used that one. But I was kind of like hoping that there was something.
Copyright claimed a few times, like.
Well, yeah, my heart will go on. It's effectively my heart will get copyrighted. So.
Yeah, here we could have just.
Beer fuel.
The OG. Anyway.
Good old fuel.
Anyway, that's a hidden gem right there.
That is an old.
It is. Old. All right.
Old.
Fired. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to go through the fired coaches, quick thoughts on those. Not nearly as much as we thought. Only one real surprise, necessarily.
Yeah.
We'll go through one retiree, quote unquote.
I want to know the conversation of that between them.
Some guys that are somehow still around, and then the guys that are being kicked around as head coaching candidates, and kind of what we think, who's most popular. Obviously, a lot more guys being interviewed and candidates for head coaching spots than there actually are head coaching spots. So, kicking it off, Matt Nagy, Ryan Pace, and staff from the Bears. The reporting structure will change a little bit, with the GM now reporting directly to chairman, George McCaskey, who has been told by the board that they would like him to continue in his role. The board is headed by his 99-year-old mother, so mommy says he's doing a good job. Ted Phillips going to be shuffled into a different role before retiring. He really should have just been fired as well, because this is Phillips / McCaskey's fourth GM, fourth head coach, fourth GM, fifth head coach actually that they'll be bringing in. So nobody's surprised by this one. As a Bears fan, needed to happen, should have happened last year. Before they drafted another quarterback, and I'm happy with the Fields pick. I think we all know that, but they should have reset the whole organization then, instead of dragging it out another year. All they did was hamper Justin Fields another year. Real weird press conference on this one, taking shots at some veterans and, not veterans, but taking shots at some retired players and some Bears legends, and just bad organizations stay bad when you don't change out the ownership or the people above the systematic issue. Maybe not ownership, because that's a harder thing to do, but your football operations people and your chairmans and your things like that. Bad organizations stay bad. So we'll see what they do. They are bringing in Bull Pulley in to help with this head coaching search, and we'll get into some candidates for it a little bit later on. Anything on Nagy and Pace? Dan? There you go. Couldn't tell if you were talking or not.
Yeah, we good?
Yeah, you're good.
All right.
We're a professional show.
Yeah, right. No shit. If they didn't get fired, or without them getting fired last year, we got the incredible, Justin Fields, I guess, interview about the situation that happened with Matt Nagy and basically calling him a fraud. That I read the article, and it's just, it's a bunch of alluding to it. Obviously, you wouldn't come out and say it, but the highlighting of, well, he coached me to the best of his ability, which is, you're a fucking idiot and you're gone. Super, super thrilled about that. Yeah, I'm pumped. Like, it's, between him and Lawrence and getting the massively new coaching staffs and stuff like that, well, potentially for Lawrence, we'll see. But Fields getting a new coaching staff brings me a lot of joy moving forward. And
Pace should have been canned, but at the same time, I started to convince myself towards the end that if they didn't, that, hasn't all been bad with Ryan Pace. He's had some draft hits. He's had some misses. He's, there's been some questionable things on the field that he could have managed better. The Bears are not the Giants. They're not in cap hell. They had an aging defense, but, cap management-wise, they're in pretty good shape. They did give up the first for Fields after giving up a couple firsts for Trubisky. So you miss on your quarterback. You don't get a chance to try to draft two franchises. He did cost some extra draft capital doing that, especially with the miss on Trubisky. But, he's definitely not the worst GM that I've ever seen. I'll put it that way. So,
no, I mean,
there are some positives, at least with Pace, unlike with Nagy.
When you don't, it's the same thing when we talk about with Spielman. When you don't hit on the key spots, when you don't hit on quarterback, when you don't hit on offensive line, over a matter of time, it doesn't matter if you're finding success in your day 3 picks. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to put the right product out there every weekend.
Yeah.
Nagy, I think Nagy didn't help him at all.
No.
I think that ended up being the true, Pace, the true nail into Pace's coffin. So, but as someone who's a huge Justin Fields fan, and you as well, I'm excited for the future. So this was a very welcomed change.
Yep. All right, Broncos. Vic Fangio let go. This is one we were on the fence about, statedly, on whether they'd let him go or Shermer would just be the fall guy. They opted to make a full sale change here. The question here for the Broncos is going to be, what do you do now? So there's some debate on what is the most attractive spot to land. The Bears because of the quarterback. The Broncos because of everything other than the quarterback is got to be one of the most attractive head coach landing spots. There's really one thing they need to address, and they're a playoff contender. And that could just be unlocking more of Drew Lock, too. That may not even be, they should address more, but you looked better with Lock than you did with Teddy. And I think that going ultra conservative with Fangio was kind of, Shermer and what they did there was kind of the downfall.
Yeah.
You go ultra conservative with Teddy Bridgewater. You lost a year in seeing what type of progression Drew Lock could make before you ran out his rookie deal by going with Bridgewater. It was just a mistake all around. So the Broncos, it'll be interesting to see what they do. They go to the defensive side of the football again. I don't think they should. They should probably go to the offensive side of the football, given a lot of the talent they have there. Bring in a really solid coordinator. But, we'll see what route they go and what happens there. They've got a good roster.
It's, from a head coaching standpoint, I would think, and I've been, I've thought that this is the best. The Broncos have the best, probably, opening, or I guess the most enticing. We say Chicago, Miami's up there too with a lot of good pieces. Denver is just there, and the defense is young. They're productive. Mm-hmm. The amount of playmakers you have on offense to really kind of help mold whoever you want to bring in. And you're going to get free reign. They're probably going to get free reign to go out there and try to acquire, a Rodgers, a Wilson. I don't think they'll go after Watson, but they're not in the market to draft their quarterback. They're more so in the market to bring in an elite guy and try to take advantage of the window they have with the young pieces on their cheap deals. So it's what they do is going to be very, very intriguing to me because there's a lot of fantasy pieces there that are kind of up in the air at this point. I mean, obviously we feel good about them, especially, Javonte Williams, but who they bring in as their head coach and then who the head coach and the GM want to do for quarterback. Exactly.
Because you've got two good tight ends. You've got that have both flashed in spurts. We know what Cortland Sutton can be, but you got an ultra-conservative quarterback that didn't want to push the ball downfield. Jerry Jeudy dealt with injuries. Tim Patrick has obviously shown what he can do. You have a great plethora of skill players here. So they need to put the coaching staff in place. I have some thoughts on this. We'll get to it a little later. Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman, go ahead.
So I've been a pretty big vocal supporter of Spielman. I still think he's one of the best at navigating through the draft. Obviously, his misses have been very highlighted. He got brought in the year before Ponder. That flamed out beautifully. Obviously, wasn't Spielman's fault. He wasn't really making moves by then, but Teddy was the true start of it. You can't blame Spielman for Teddy. Teddy's injury was a freak accident, non-contact that leg injury that he almost lost. But it's afterwards, it's the countless misses at O-line. You can forgive a GM for missing sporadically, every now and then on these O-line pieces, but nearly everyone feels like a miss. And like we talked about with Pace, it comes a matter of time where you are given a leash with hitting on day 3 picks, but missing on your top round picks. More notably, especially with Zimmer, is the countless misses at defensive back. And Xavier Rhodes
might that up, or the trade ups to get a defensive back.
The trade ups, yeah. It's been outside of Xavier Rhodes, they've missed. I think Trey Waynes was a miss from where they got him. Mike Hughes, Jeff Gladdy, you can't put on them, but it is what it is. And then Mackenzie Alexander. And obviously with Zimmer, he just warmed out his welcome. I love Zimmer as a head coach. I love Zimmer as a person. His coaching style and his influence on the players just got outgrown. You got the league past him, and instead of bringing in an OC that he can work alongside with that could really take advantage of the offensive pieces that they have, it was always butting heads. It was Spielman's questionable calls along with Zimmer with the OC, bringing in more of these run-oriented, play-action-based OCs that just it can work, but it is what it is. I don't blame Spielman for the first Cousins contract. You had to do that. I do blame him for the extension, and especially Zimmer's extension. So I hate to see Spielman go. I would love to see what he could have done picking a new head coach to be tethered to outside of Zimmer, but I think these guys are always attached at the hip, especially when they both got their extensions at the same amount of time. So I'm excited. Obviously, we'll talk about what we can get after this. I do believe Cousins is gone. I do believe he'll be a pre-June 1st trade. There's enough teams out there, and I think you're going to see the next regime come in and want to clean house. But again, we'll see a lot of good offensive pieces. They may try to treat this, especially with Thielen setting to retire soon. They may want to treat this as trying to run it out. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, there's something that Theo Epstein is one of the most revered GMs in MLB history and team presidents, and is a favorite to land the next commissioner spot, said, Times Leader of the Year in 2016. And it is that after 10 years of influence on a franchise, you've kind of run out of the influence you can make, and you need a fresh vision and a fresh eye. And I think that applies a lot to Spielman, where he'd been with the team forever. Yep. So, at 10 years in or close to 10 years in, and I think that What was Zimmer? He was
15. He was a couple years after Spielman.
with the Vikings? Has it been that
Yeah,
long?
Spielman got brought in 2012. Zimmer was brought in, I think, 14 or
2015.
15.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
6,
think
7
14,
years.
yeah.
So not quite 10. But the other thing with that, too, in the NFL, that turns over quicker. And Zimmer was absolutely the right guy when the Vikings brought him in, which was you had a good running game, a very solid defense, and, you needed a guy that nurtured that, and he did that. He did what he was supposed to with that.
Well, the defense, when Zimmer was brought in, the defense was the worst ranked in the league. So Zimmer was, like you said, he was brought in because the offense was set with Peterson. That was the Ponder McNabb fiasco pre-Teddy. But it was the defense was in such shambles. They brought Zimmer in because of what he did with Dallas and what he mainly did with Cincinnati during his time with Marvin Lewis.
So what you do from there, though, is you've got a team, like you mentioned, that has high-end. They don't have a lot of depth. They have high-end offensive pieces, not a lot of depth. The roster didn't fit what Zimmer does well anymore, and it passed him up, like you said. So Vikings would need to go look offensive side of the ball. Find somebody that can, still leverage what you have in Dalvin Cook, make the most out of Justin Jefferson. Irv Smith hopefully comes back healthy, and you've got another weapon there, and, can really utilize some of those high-end pieces. KJ Osborne had some nice flashes this year. Don't want to take anything away from him. So
no, I mean, he's, again, a legitimate. Spielman's done a hell of a job finding late round wide receiver production from Amir Smith-Marset towards the end of the year, and then, as you said, KJ Osborne.
Yeah,
he's not a 2, but he's a very, very good 3.
Yep. So, and then whatever Thielen decides to do,
yeah,
we'll see what they do. I have thoughts on what they should do. I think that you got to nurture that offense while trying to rebuild the defense, because this is what happens when your team's kind of out of sync, if you will. You have a window on one side of the ball, but not on the other. You got to try to win with that side of the ball.
And offense has really been catered towards that. Unfortunately, because of the Vikings going the way that the Eagles went after their Super Bowl run, is that they went all in, and the contracts they gave out. Spielman did a remarkable job in keeping the core of the team intact by just navigating through the contracts beautifully. When those don't hit, and you saw it with the Saints, you lose that leverage in terms of these team-friendly deals. They're starting to have to be paid out now, and the Vikings have they're the third lowest, in salary cap this year. They'll be the third lowest in 23. They just have to eat some of these, and moving on from Cousins in a trade would save them $35 million. So there's a lot of incentives to see how they navigate would be based on, I think, some of the key moves they make early on.
There's a lot of incentive for a team like Denver, for example, to look at that too. So
Denver, I think Cleveland. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Baker plus some picks for Cousins move.
I think you want that.
The team only has to pick up, the team has to pick up the $35 million contract too, but they don't have to pick up the 45. So the Vikings only eat 10 mil. So there's a lot of incentive in terms of, yes, you have to still pay, Cousins sounds like a lot, but that's a little above average, a little above the median of quarterbacks being paid at the top tier. So
sure.
We'll see.
Other firings that don't hit us so well. Brian Flores was surprising. Apparently there was a rift between the GM and him, which likely led to this. But Flores is the one that was surprising. I thought that he overachieved with the Dolphins. He overachieved with that defense, particularly last year. But he took a team that was headed the wrong direction after some key injuries early on, righted the ship, won 8 of the last 9, or 9 of the last. I think it was 8 of the last 9.
Yeah, it was.
With them, and there were definitely some deficiencies on that team that he was not set up well with. The running back being very key, a huge deficiency in Miami. You know, Devontae Parker regressing back to underperforming over the last 2 years didn't help. Their key offseason addition in Will Fuller not really playing at all didn't help. But the record and the end of the season was not justification enough to fire Flores. It was all about a rift that was there, and he's going to be super sought after.
Yeah, I mean, besides some of the OCs, he's the key. Like, he is one of the first hires that gets made.
Yeah, and you put him with a good OC. And again, it's another guy, like, he's defensive minded, but you look at a team like Denver that could go defensive on the other side of the football and try to pair it with a good OC,
Yeah.
Or, you look at Chicago that is also typically had a solid defense. They still have some good pieces, especially with Roquan Smith and, Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson. There's still some pieces there despite an aging pass rush. There's definitely places for Brian Flores. If he doesn't get another head coaching gig, he's definitely going to get a defensive coordinator gig.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if he doesn't get a head coaching job. But
yeah, the only hard part about that,
it wouldn't surprise me as well.
Yeah, we'll get there in a minute. And then Joe Judge let go late. Took the Giants an extra day to get to this one.
This man, I think this man really wanted to get fired. I think he wasn't good by all means, but I mean, good on the Giants, and hopefully Giants fans can now be relieved that the Giants are again cleaning house and getting rid of the stench that was.
There's no
Gettleman and Judge.
Quick fix to the Giants.
That I don't know who wants this job. If you talk about a head coach that may last 1 year, this is worse than the Cardinals roster when the guy took over when they drafted Josh Rosen.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name because he lasted for a season. Like, if someone takes this route, and the defense is pretty good. Like, the defense continues to overachieve to an extent, but it's the situation and the expectations and the fact that you're in New York. It's just, oh my God,
and you have no cap space for whatever GM comes under.
Absolutely right.
You have less than no cap space. They couldn't even field the full roster at the end of the year.
I think they're going to have a hard time finding a GM more so than even a head coach.
Steve Wilkes is the name you're looking for.
Steve Wilkes? Oh, yes.
Yeah. That was in between Bruce Arians and Cliff Kingsbury.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, Joe Judge, total dumpster fire. He will hopefully go into the abyss somewhere. He's going back to college, I think.
He's got to go back to college. He's, maybe we'll see.
That or he's going to end up as a low-end position coordinator someplace.
Maybe he'll be a DC. Maybe someone will try to, snag him up as their defensive coordinator and see if they can strike some magic,
some gold,
to him. Yeah, strike some gold.
Yeah. Well, I will say this for Joe Judge. Dave Gettleman, who, quote, retired, didn't do him any favors either with that roster, with the construction was put on the field, with the cap space. He was not handed anything easy to work with.
It's good riddance, Gettleman.
Yeah, I don't know what their relationship was like, but Gettleman was the single biggest problem in New York. Thankfully, he's gone.
Yep.
All right, real quick, some guys that are still around somehow. These are guys that are likely to start their season kind of on the hot seat. Matt Rule.
I think he's a candidate for a midseason fire next year if the Panthers start off slow.
Yep. Kevin Stefanski. He's gonna ride this thing out with Baker till the end, and then
it's kind of like Matt Nagy. He's riding off of the praise he got. I think he won Coach of the Year last year, didn't he? I'm pretty sure he did. So he'll ride off of that same wave that Nagy did with the Bears.
Yeah, Darrell Bevell. That's not really on him, so we're just gonna gloss over that one. He's been invited to interview, so he's only still around in that sense. Pete Carroll. This is on name cachet. More so than anything.
Maybe if they move Wilson, that means Carroll will go, or maybe he'll just retire and it just hasn't happened yet.
Yep. Other guys, handful of coordinators like Matt Canada with the Steelers. They're a playoff team. So we'll see coordinators start to fall here soon.
Yep.
Those usually happen a bit later. And then Trent Baalke, Jacksonville's GM, who somehow didn't get shit canned.
There a guy worse than Dave Gettleman, it might be Trent Baalke.
That's true.
That's just my God. I don't know. I don't know how he even got that job after he fucked up the Niners so bad.
Indeed. All right, some names flying around for head coaching spots. Now, keep in mind, there are 5 head coaching spots due to firing. The Bears, the Broncos, the Vikings, the Dolphins, and the Giants. There are 2 head coaches right now that are interim. It is the Raiders with Rich Bisaccia and the Jaguars with Darrell Bevell. So there are 7 head coaching openings at the moment. As of this recording. So here are the guys that are targeted. Just quick thought on each guy and where you want to see him land. Brian Dabble at the top of the list. Buffalo Bills' current offensive coordinator.
I mean, he's kind of him, Leftwich, and Brian Flores potentially now, and potentially Kellen Moore are kind of the quote unquote top candidates here. I think Dabble is the high. I think Dabble's got to be the hottest name that people want, though.
Yeah. Well, and I think with the transition of Josh Allen and the quarterback development, I mean, this could be an Adam Gase type thing with Cutler and Manning, right? But the development that he was able to get out of Josh Allen and that offense, the way he was able to structure it, one of the big complaints that idiot beat writer following Bears fans, not that you're an idiot for beat writers, but the people that feel the need to comment on everything, we're throwing about on Dabble is, well, he doesn't run the football. He was top 15 every year he's with the Bills and running the football. When you have a quarterback, that would be Adoree Jackson a couple years back. When you have a rushing quarterback, your running back rushes inherently go down. But that doesn't hurt your team rushing and your team's ability to rush. And Devin Singletary over the last 5 games of the year was actually pretty damn good. Never mind the fact that, he's been saddled with Devin Singletary and Zach Moss and a bunch of just guys, too. So, Dabble will run the football. And he's been relatively successful at it as well. So, for Dabble, he's a guy that wherever he lands, I think he's going to be successful. Obviously, top name, I'm expecting either Denver, Chicago, Minnesota for him. Selfishly, want him in Chicago to work with Fields.
That would be, as much as I want him in Minnesota, I think from my love of Justin Fields, that's where I think he goes. Don't be surprised, and this happens in the past with teams that are very much want to be tethered to their OC, is Buffalo blocking teams from interviewing Dabble or just flat out blocking him from going.
So they haven't blocked him from interviewing yet that I've heard.
Okay. It may not happen. Buffalo may feel like where Allen's development is, and then
that's a real shitty move if you want to attract coordinators and stuff to your organization later, is to block them from interviewing.
Yeah, Minnesota famously did that with Pat Shurmur after the 2017 season from the Giants.
Yeah, so shitty move.
It was, but this is hyper competitive. They're just coming off of a championship game, and the offense hadn't looked this good in years. So I get it, but yeah, shitty move.
Let's see if there's any confirmed interviews with them yet. No, just 2 requests. So not confirmed yet. Haven't heard of anything being blocked. Couple requests from Chicago and Miami. Leslie Frazier, Chicago's requested an interview with him. This is the Bills' defensive coordinator and former Vikings head coach. Frazier, I know you don't have the fondest memories, but I went back and looked, and it wasn't actually the worst. This was Christian Ponder years, I believe. So
he was. Dude noted though, after his firing, I don't know if it was a couple years afterwards, players on the roster said how much they loved him. Mm-hmm. He just wasn't the right coach for them. He just they weren't going to extract enough. I think Frazier is better off staying as a DC. I think this would be a mistake hire by Chicago, regardless of my thoughts on it. I from those comments alone, I think the Bears going defensive coordinator might be a mistake again. I think they got to go offensive coordinator or the offense, but more offensive minded head coach.
Yep, he'll also be interviewing with Miami.
Send them there. Fuck them. They fired Flores for dumb reasons.
Jim Harbaugh, his name's being thrown around a lot, coming back to the NFL from Michigan. The NFL kind of passed him up at the end of his tenure with San Francisco, but again,
Jim
Balky could bring him down to Jacksonville. You've got, Jacksonville bringing in another college coach, I think, is a giant mistake.
No, he worked with Balky with the Niners. Balky was the reason. Like Balky basically, pinned their struggles on Harbaugh and got him fired.
That's it. You look at the success that Harbaugh had with Kaepernick and the type of quarterback he is, the type of quarterback that Fields is, and I can look at that and say that that's not the worst thing for Chicago to be tied to him. Again, we don't know what Minnesota is going to do at the position. We don't know what Denver is going to do at the position. Chicago is the easiest to see from a quarterback perspective. I like the idea. Also the fact that you're not looking at somebody that would be a first-time head coach, but an experienced head coach. If Minnesota wants a change of vision, but to keep that experience there, he's a guy that they could go after, and it's really the same thing for Denver.
Yeah, that's why I think they're one of the two most premium spots for coaches. I think most head coaches, when they see the idea of getting to work with a potential franchise QB like Justin Fields, it's you can really bring in the top guys who want to work there.
The other thing with Harbaugh is he could just decide to stay in Michigan with his giant contract and his recent college football playoff appearance.
Yeah. I will say during Harbaugh's time with during the Kaepernick years, he did have Greg Roman, who's also is rumored to have head coaching positions leaving Baltimore. So,
although no interviews for Roman yet.
Yeah, I with Roman's track history with mobile quarterbacks, I'm not saying that Harbaugh didn't play a hand in it, but that may be more of a great Roman reason why that he got the most out of him, especially during his during that Super Bowl run.
Yeah. Well, other guys, Brian Flores, we talked about him a bit and what his fits could be. Bill O'Brien is being kicked around. Jacksonville's requested an interview with him. Couple others, I think. So, Bill O'Brien as a coach, you're probably okay. Do not give him GM duties. Whatever you do, do not let him come in and play GM.
It feels like a move for Jacksonville coming off of the heels of Urban Meyer. Bill O'Brien might find some success, that he's going to bring such negative PR if they sign him. It's got to be. They got to bring in, I think Byron Leftwich would be the best just because of his ties to the city.
I think so, too. You bring Leftwich in, ties to the city, very well regarded. Let him work with a rookie quarterback. Good segue. He's the next on the list, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on Bill O'Brien. But I think bringing Leftwich in and giving him a shot is the best move you could make. He's a former quarterback in the league. It's good for Trevor Lawrence's development. He's a guy that is very well regarded. He's had tutelage under one of the best offensive minds in the league, and Bruce Arians. And you're not jumping somebody from college that's going to run a clown show. I think that for Jacksonville, who's going to have a young roster, is going to be in rebuild mode for the next couple of years, Byron Leftwich is a guy that I think would be great to lead that team and a great fit there.
Yeah, it feels just from the type of reception they would get would be great. Getting out of the shit show of ex head coaches they've had that have struggled with them. I think bringing in Leftwich would just breathe a lot of life into the fan base instead of wearing fucking clown bats to the stadium, which I love because they end up beating the Colts. But I think for moving forward with the franchise, granted, you don't want to just hire based off of that type of reason, but I think in Leftwich's case, I think it's also a good hire.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to. The only thing I worry about with Leftwich is I don't want to see his coaching career tanked by the fact that he gets saddled with Trent Baalke.
Yeah, I just, like, oh my God, I feel so bad for Trevor Lawrence.
I do too.
But I mean, hopefully Baalke is fired and then they're still able to retain like Leftwich if they bring him in. I don't know.
All right, Todd Bowles getting some looks. So Bowles, former Jets head coach. My impression on Bowles when he was fired is that he got more out of that roster than what he should have. It was a situation where I feel like the Jets really overachieved with him.
Yeah.
That there was just
the Jets being a dumpster fire franchise is really it. Like Bowles, unfortunately, didn't have the greatest win-loss record, I think, for his last couple years with the Jets. And it's also the Jets. Like, maybe he will. I don't think it'd be the right fit. Again, I think offensive-minded for Jacksonville would be the move that I'd like to see him make. I would think it'd be the right move.
Yeah. And the records with the Jets weren't good, but, I mean, he had some truly...
He did 10-6 in, right, with Ryan Fitzpatrick, right?
He was 10-6 with Fitzpatrick, yeah, in his first year there.
That's okay.
3-2 interim with Miami. So, I mean, there's been some success, but then, after that, Jets with some truly bad rosters. Not a lot you could do there. So the defensive coordinator for the Bucs defense has been very, very good the last several years. I think Bowles is a guy that does deserve another head coaching shot at some point. Are any of these available teams the right fit for him? Again, it's when you look at Denver that has a more veteran roster, and you could say that definitely could be a good fit for Todd Bowles. You look at Miami, who's probably not going to get in on some of these top-tier guys. I think that the top-tier guys are going to be looking at more established rosters like, Chicago, Minnesota, Denver, or, the other team with a franchise quarterback, which is Jacksonville, but it's less attractive because of the GM.
Yeah. I mean, even Todd Bowles, going with, even a team like Minnesota, where the reason they brought in Zimmer was because of how bad the defense was. You bring in a guy like Bowles who helped turn around the Bucs defense in a short time.
Right.
Again, just like we talked about how Denver would do it, a head coach with defensive-minded background, you bring in an OC that has free reign, you could see that in Minnesota as well.
Yep. The other thing I think that, if he could work with the GM there in Miami, you could have a good fit there as well because he's a guy that I think can plug in for Flores without them taking steps backwards, essentially.
Yeah.
All right, Kellen Moore, another offensive-minded guy. Cowboys offensive coordinator. It's another guy you want to see come in somewhere established where he's got a quarterback that he can work with, but offensive pieces that he can work with as well. It'd be a young head coach that you'd want to see surrounded with some good coordinators. They have the hiccups.
Kellen Moore he was slightly rumored saying that he's very interested in potentially a head coaching job with Minnesota. From someone who wants to...
Should be.
Someone who wants to see an offensive-minded coach, I've absolutely loved what he's been able to accomplish in Dallas.
I would love it even more if they don't trade Cousins and bring in Kellen Moore.
That would also be it. I know there's a lot of the fans in this fan base that want to see at least 1 year with Cousins not tethered to Zimmer. Yeah. And Clint Kubiak is still technically the OC. There has been interview requests from Carolina. I pray to God that he leaves. But maybe Kellen Moore. I would be all about it.
But the other thing, too, is that could be a situation as well, like it is a lot of times, and coordinators don't get axed, is you're going to bring in the new head coach and let them decide who they want to keep and not want to keep on their staff. So you don't let them get hired away due to uncertainty. You hold on to them and then let the new head coach decide. That's part of the reason why you don't see coordinator shifting until, later on in the hiring cycle.
Yeah. Yep.
Dan Quinn, Falcons head coach, former, led them to the Super Bowl. Now Dallas's defensive coordinator, good from a takeaway front, bad from a giving up a bunch of yardage front. And, for a guy whose calling card was defense, his defenses were never that good. This feels like it could be a Giants hire.
They take Jason Garrett away from Dallas too.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to see Dan Quinn in another head coaching role just yet. I don't like Dallas's defense enough.
He fits the profile of a head coach that gets a second chance. Mm-hmm. Like,
he made a Super Bowl.
Fucking Ed Reed made a comment today, stop recycling bad head coaches. Dan Quinn fits that perfectly. Like,
keep him in a coordinator role. He's
yeah,
fine.
I mean, yeah, put him at DC. Maybe he just sticks with Dallas if he doesn't get, if he doesn't get these jobs.
I hope he does, because again, you have 7 jobs and about 14 guys getting interviews. Doug Peterson, saddled by roster decisions after that Super Bowl run, saddled by some bad contracts. That's on Howie Roseman, not on Doug Peterson. Does he deserve another chance?
I've seen a lot of Vikings fans rumored they want to bring him in. I'm kind of soured on what happened towards his tenure with Philly. Was he the big reason why that they won the Super Bowl? Was it Frank Wright with Carson Wentz? I mean, maybe he does. Maybe he was kind of a scapegoated, but seeing what Philly was able to accomplish this year with 1 year turnaround with Nick Sirianno and Howie Roseman still there at GM, that didn't help the picture for Doug Peterson. I think the Eagles making it back there may have hurt him a little bit. So
there's another one. He's used to the Northeast type of media style and everything. There's another one that could land in the Giants' lap.
That one kind of feels like a Giants move, right? I get a guy that's ex-head coach that will just get recycled on and do a new roster.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next up after Peterson, Nathaniel Hackett, current Packers offensive coordinator, former offensive coordinator with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Blake Bortles.
He's still with the Saints. He got re-signed.
He did get
back
re-signed.
onto the roster.
I know. Did you see my tweet?
I probably
about
I see almost all your tweets. I must have missed that
Bortles
one.
and Winston being on the same roster.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. Now I remember that one.
Yeah. Bortles and Winston on the same roster is a wet dream for me. This is a guy who's been very successful the last 3 seasons in Green Bay, obviously with Aaron Rodgers, but his big calling card is that 2017 season in Jacksonville where he was able to get a boatload out of Leonard Fournette and even more of a boatload out of Blake Bortles.
I mean, he's in the perfect OC dream spot. He doesn't have to do a fucking thing with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I don't know what type of move this would create. You can give him, kudos to what he accomplished in Jacksonville 5 years ago, but it's also 5 years ago.
He's been good with Rodgers, though, which is why he's getting looks, even though Rodgers is a guy that's going to make people
So it kind of feels like Adam Gase, kind of feels like Josh
Gase
McDaniels.
With Manning, McDaniels with Brady.
Yeah.
I will say this. If there is a team out there, Denver, that wants to land Aaron Rodgers, then his OC over the last 3 years might be enough to pull him away from Matt LaFleur in a franchise that he doesn't seem to be in love with. So if you want to make a power play, you know where I'm going with this. Does Denver potentially hire Hackett as a play towards Rodgers?
How about this? Let's go a little bit more nuttier. Basketball. If you're the top in LeBron, famously for quote unquote picking his head coaches. What if Denver is able to pry away Rodgers without even hiring an OC or OC head coach, because they'll let Rodgers have a massive influence on who he wants to be his head coach.
I think the only hard part with that is that the hiring cycle is going to go. I know it is. It's tinfoil hat. But the hard part with that is that your hiring cycle is going to go on throughout the playoffs, where Rodgers is going to stay under contract with Green Bay until the end of the league year.
Yeah.
And your top head coaching options, unless there's something prearranged, are going to fall before you can.
I mean, look at Nathaniel Hackett, though, right? He's not a premium candidate right now.
No,
he could be looked over.
No, he can be, but who's to say that Rodgers? If you're telling Rodgers you can pick from amongst the scraps, essentially. Let's say that Dabble, Moore,
fair.
and others go. Well, if they're viewed pretty universally in NFL circles as the top 4 to 5 options, and then whatever dumbass hire Miami and New York makes. Because I'm just assuming they're going to fuck it up.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping the Bears won't. That's the only reason they're not included in that. You can pick from among the scraps, Aaron. You can have Nathaniel Hackett, Doug Peterson, or Dan Quinn.
I think Quinn and Peterson actually get head coaching job. That's where the fucked up part is.
They're the two that end up in Miami and New York.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And like I said, tinfoil hat, because obviously basketball is different there, but it feels like a Denver move. That feels like a John Elway inspired move.
John Elway isn't in charge, though. Patton is. That's
true. He's not. He's not. Patton is. God, imagine Patton. He leaves Minnesota 1 year ago, and Spielman gets fired.
Yeah.
Let go. This could have been Patton's job.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much you would want more our roster at Denver's, but much more familiar with the organization here.
I don't know, but my tinfoil hat was Denver hires Nathaniel Hackett to try to lure Aaron Rodgers over to that roster. That's my tinfoil.
I can totally see that happening, and there might be some tampering going on where there might be some prearranged trades ideas based around what Denver does.
Yeah. Another guy that overachieved with some bad rosters, Jim Caldwell.
Was he the one that got the most out of Detroit's roster?
Yeah, without a contract.
I know Jacksonville's linked to fucking everybody.
They're linked to everybody.
And then Denver right afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I again. He's also extremely old.
He is. I think he's 63. But he's gotten a lot out of some bad rosters as well. He's a guy that I look at and say if he's hired, he's a transition coach. You're just setting up to be the fall guy in
Minnesota.
2 to 3 years.
It feels like, because I think we're in some.
The Giants.
I think Minnesota's in for some quiet years here the next couple of years.
The Giants.
Well, yeah. Giants make the most sense. Maybe even Miami.
Yeah. All right, Jared Mayo, Patriots inside linebackers coach, getting an interview with Denver again. Patriots don't really have defensive coordinators, so it's usually a backers coach or something like that ends up getting plucked from there. Matt Patricia was the closest thing they had in recent memory. So Jared Mayo getting an interview with Denver. That, to me, doesn't feel like it's going to go anywhere just yet.
No, I agree.
Tree hasn't really done much. Eric Bieniemy getting an interview with Denver, as he should. Somebody brought it up, though, and I will say this. Bieniemy hasn't gotten a job yet as a head coach. A lot of people think he deserves one, but when you look at, what the last thing to fall off of Andy Reid's coaching tree, I can see why there's some pause there as to how much of the offensive coordinator's success is Andy Reid and how much of the offensive coordinator's success is the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, this one feels like it could be a ticking time bomb. Zimmer was in the same light with Cincinnati. Many people believed he should have had a head coaching job a lot sooner than what he got.
Fangio was the same thing and ended up bombing.
Yeah, it just may end up being that Bieniemy is just... It's the league knows more than we do.
Yeah.
And he may not interview well, and it just may be the fact that he's not the best fit, and his fit should be and maybe just with the Chiefs as their OC.
Right. Kevin O'Connell, next guy hoping to fall off the McVay coaching tree, although McVay coaches have done well offensively in the league.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how Zach Taylor continues to pan out.
Zach Taylor, so far so good this year. I mean, last year was a little rough, but young roster.
Yep.
So far so good this year. There was one other guy that fell off of that. Oh, Matt LaFleur.
LaFleur, yeah.
In Green Bay.
I mean, yeah. I mean, fucking Mike McCarthy was relevant for as long as he was, and
well, McCarthy's been
Rodgers helps.
Fine in Dallas too. So, but Rodgers does help. Jonathan Gannon, who is so important, I don't even remember what his position is. He's a defensive coordinator for somebody. Indy?
It sounds like a made-up name. It sounds like a bro name from a shitty movie.
I think he's Indy.
Like DC?
Eagles defensive coordinator. Sorry.
Well,
Aaron
that's fair.
Indy.
He got a lot out of that defense this year.
He did get a lot out of that defense this year, but it wasn't at a dominating level where I think you bring him in to be a defensive head coach in the NFL. Defensive head coaches in the NFL, by the way, rarity that they pan out. Mike Vrabel, most recent one that comes to mind. Brian Flores.
Yep.
Those are the most recent two that come to mind. So offense is kind of the quicker way to make your hay. And then Brian Callahan, Bengals defensive coordinator. Don't know how that's a thing.
Let's see.
So, real quick exercise. Who are the 7 out of this list you think end up with head coaching jobs? Also, Rich Bisaccia, by the way, you can go ahead if you want and plug him in and say that the Raiders just retain him after making a playoff run. Could depend how deep they go, but we'll talk about him more a little bit later in this show. I think in an honorable mention somewhere. But
no, I mean he'll be the first topic we talk about it.
Oh yeah, he will.
I mean, Jason Garrett feels like the last interim head coach to be retained and kept long term for what he was able to do when he took over for Dallas ever so long ago. And maybe he's in that same position too.
They made the playoffs after having a player, your top receiver thrown in jail, and your head coach fired for being a racist.
And so much more. I think he is a candidate. It feels like a Raiders move, and it kind of feels like the right move. Maybe it's he completely overachieved in what was the Chargers kind of flaming out towards the end. The Colts definitely flaming out towards the end, and who knows? Brian Daboll, I think, does. Brian Flores, I think he does. Leftwich, I think, does. Kellen Moore. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 numbers show. 3 more.
3 more. Peterson, O'Brien, just because it feels like a move a team would make.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Harbaugh, I think, does come out. I think some team plucks him away.
All right. For me, I think Bisaccia is retained by Oakland. Or Vegas, sorry.
That's fair. So
it's going to be him, Dabble, Leftwich, Moore. So that's 4. I'm going to go with probably Bill O'Brien making a return just because the world hates me. Brian Flores, who I hadn't thrown out there yet, and these are in no order. And then I'll say Kevin O'Connell is going to jump in as a surprise name somewhere. Somebody's going to take a chance on another McVay fall.
I like that. I think the Raiders really feel like a Jim Harbaugh location. Yeah. Like they think they found their guy until Harbaugh, comes a knocking. So
right. All right, beer review, and let's get into the Fuelies. Hour into the episode. All right.
Beer review.
All right. Go ahead, Dan. You got some Bourbon County.
Yeah, so this is Bourbon County number 4 stout. This is their mocha, roasted nuts, sweet maple, and a touch of blueberry. There's no blueberry on this. Probably fell off. This was their 2020 release. Mix of being super tired and probably drunk. No blueberry on this, but you get a lot of the maple that's still there. Sweet. It's a bit too much. Obviously I'm having this myself, so I would much prefer to share this. But again, when you have adjunct stouts that are over a year old, you kind of want to get through them as quickly as possible, so you can try to get some of the notes that are still on there. Roasted nuts really do pack in with the maple and make it overly sweet. Not bad. Not my favorite Bourbon County variant.
I did take care of the comments in the show chat. By the way, this is a friendly reminder that if you want to interact with the show, go to YouTube.
Yes.
We're on YouTube, Beerfield Podcast. All right. I have a robust porter from Narrow Gauge. So, color on this one, I'm going to go through just the way that I normally would. Color on this one is dark, slightly amber. Overall, exactly what I'd expect out of a porter. Nose, get some roasty notes of chocolate there. It doesn't smell overly roasty. There's not like coffee notes or anything like I'd expect from a stout. So, just some slight roasty, some slight chocolate notes. Typically what I would expect out of a porter. As far as the robustness goes, it definitely does have that robust flavor to it. There is a little bit of a warming sensation from the alcohol, but it's not overwhelming. As I enter this beer, it fades into just some very nice malt character. I think chocolate malt is very prominent in this one. As I get some of those roasty, almost coffee notes, but they definitely lean a little bit more on the chocolate side than the bitter or the roasty side. So it's kind of caramel, dark chocolate. Has a little bit of a lingering sweetness at the back end. Again, exactly what I would expect from a porter. Medium to medium heavy body on this. The finish hangs out for quite a bit, actually. It's a little bit of a long finish. It's not thick. Easy drinking. This is exactly what I would expect out of this style of beer. It's very, very well done. Just classic expression of a style, which I like in beers well more than I like heavily dry hopped or heavily over adjuncted stuff. Narrow Gauge, not a one trick pony. There's some other breweries out there who I won't name that, live off of heavily adjuncted beer, heavily dry hop beer. While Narrow Gauge makes their name off of their hazy IPAs, this is proof they can just do a good beer.
Yeah, they're extremely sought after in the Midwest area. St. Louis does we can poke fun at them. They got some. I mean, from having Side Project ranked number 2 brewery in the world in 2020 to having Narrow Gauge and Perennial, there's a lot of great microbrews. Mm-hmm. So if you're in the Midwest area, I highly recommend, especially if you're in the St. Louis area, I highly recommend checking out these breweries.
I mean, from the Metro East over. I mean,
you
start out with Old Herald, Stubborn German, Mill Pond in the Metro East. You work your way over towards downtown where you actually have Schlafly and Four Hands, and then Perennial, and out towards Heavy Riff, and Narrow Gauge up north, and Side Project as you get more towards U City out west, and even I think they're Shortleaf now, formerly Petrichor, as you go out towards the Ozarks. There's plenty of good beer to be had in this area.
Yep.
So, about the only thing in St. Louis I'll wax. I have the hiccups again. About the only thing in St. Louis I'll wax poetic on is beer. All right. It's time.
Beer-fueled fuelies.
All right. The Fuelies. I'm going to do this a little different. So we both plugged in some honorable mentions. We both plugged in a guy that we picked. I'm going to run through the nominees, which could be any number of nominees. And then we'll announce our winners, and then we'll touch on anybody else we want to touch on from that nominee list. So, for Coach of the Year, the nominees are Matt LaFleur, head coach of the Green Bay Packers; David Culley, head coach of the Texans; That's a weird one. We'll get to that in a minute. Dan Campbell, head coach of the Detroit Lions. Another weird one. We'll get to that in a minute. Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Eagles. These are all head coaches. I'm just going to stop saying head coach.
Yes.
Rich Bisaccia, head coach. I did it. Of the Las Vegas Raiders. And Mike Vrabel of the Tennessee Titans. Dan, who is your pick for coach of the year?
There is one honorable mention I forgot to throw out that I forgot to write down. That'd be John Harbaugh.
Oh.
By honorable mention, be my nominee. My pick was Mike Vrabel. Slowly, a lot of it was based on of the Titans getting the number 1 seed. The ability to still be a productive winning team with the loss of Derrick Henry, which is the identity of your offense. Julio Jones in and out of the offense. They lost multiple pieces on the offensive line, the defense struggling. The loss of Arthur Smith, I think, was also a piece of the identity of that offense the last couple of years. And then, A.J. Brown in and out of the lineup as well. Not as bad as Julio, but they were able to kind of overcome the weathering that was the AFC as a whole. And while I don't know if Vrabel will actually win Coach of the Year this year, Matt LaFleur probably feels like the pick that will actually happen. I think in this case, for what he was able to accomplish still in getting that number 1 spot, which is, I don't think as important as the NFC spot, but it's still very much a great accomplishment to get.
All right, and for me, it is, and I do agree with the Vrabel pick, by the way. A little different here after I thought about it a bit, and it is Rich Bisaccia. I had to get over being mad about that game not ending in a tie, which was a giant letdown and took me a couple hours to get over. But when you think about what he did, a special teams coordinator stepping into the head coach's role after after Gruden was let go after a solid start. I mean, Gruden wasn't let go for performance reasons. He was let go for human being reasons.
very, very good. Very true.
Very good human being reasons to be let go for. And then you lose your top wide receiver to a boneheaded incident. Total boneheaded, tragic incident. And, you also lose your top pass catcher for a portion of the year. For him to step in and be able to lead that team to the playoffs, even in a 7-team field, I think speaks volumes to the resiliency of that team, being able to keep that team together, being able to keep that team believing. And being able to do something with that as somebody with no prior head coaching experience, no prior coordinator experience, or offensive defensive coordinator experience. I mean, you don't see special teams guys getting tapped to be head coaches all that often. So for him to come in and do that, I thought was a hell of an achievement. Some other guys I want to call out here. I'm going to call out the other guys that are a little weird here because I think that LaFleur and Sirianni in even Harbaugh, you don't got to give a ton of airtime to because it's kind of obvious whether maybe Harbaugh a little bit.
I'll wax my reason why I almost picked Harbaugh for this spot.
Coley and Campbell, the reason they're here is what they did with how little they had. Everybody expected the Texans to go 0-16. Nobody expected anything out of that roster, especially when Brandon Cooks went down for a period of time. Tyrod Taylor went down after a hot start. The Davis Mills pick, everybody looked at and said, what the hell are they doing? Total unknown that ends up forced into a starting role, ends up being the second best rookie quarterback. The defense overperforms. And down the stretch, Houston was able to play teams close. So you can't give a coach of the year to somebody with that record. You can absolutely acknowledge the job that he did in keeping that team together, making them play better as a unit, and getting the most out of his rookie quarterback who nobody expected anything out of. It was a hell of a job by him to do that. And I think they're right to retain him if that's ultimately what they end up doing and let him see part of this rebuild. And Dan Campbell, people thought that the Lions are making an obscure hire with that one when they did it. He showed from a culture perspective why they did that. And the Lions did not have the best roster. They lost their two best pieces of the roster in DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson. They had a good line, but Campbell had that team clicking on all cylinders, playing for each other, playing to win, believing in themselves. Great foundation for Detroit to build on by instilling the culture in that locker room. And there's so much more to a head coach than what the on-field results are. And Dan Campbell is everything Joe Judge spent 12 minutes trying to convince people he was.
I really don't like, and you see this now with the quarterback position being always a favorite for MVP and always a favorite for offensive rookie of the year. It's the same thing goes for coaches. That I think the win-loss is such a overplayed. It's so overly rated in terms of what you were able to achieve from a roster. This is why I love Dan Campbell, was also a close pick of mine, and why I love John Harbaugh as a pick here. And that's because of what the Ravens had to endure from an injury standpoint for all they lost from training camp all the way through to the final week of the season before Lamar Jackson went down and then eventually was out for the rest of the season. The Ravens were the number one team in the AFC. Granted, they still underachieve at times, but again, this was Harbaugh and his coaching staff getting the most out of street level type of players. And granted, it helps when you have your franchise quarterback still healthy, but they were still having to battle through Lamar Jackson's struggles with him playing too much hero ball. That I got to give light to that. If Jackson doesn't get hurt and Ravens make the playoffs, Harbaugh would have easily been one of the top candidates, not from us, but from the NFL, because he was getting those pegs before Jackson's injury, just where he had Baltimore had. So I love the fact that both David Culley, who was set up to fail, which is easily seen, Dan Campbell, for what he was able to change in the culture of Detroit. I don't know if he's going to be a successful coach long term. The fact that he's massively defensive minded and wants to run the football, we've seen those coaches not have the longest success. But he got his players to run through a wall for him.
He's gritty,
and he wants to bite off kneecaps, and he's super gritty. That speaks to where you have a ragtag group of guys. It's like a sports movie, except the record didn't actually reflect it, and they made the playoffs in some insane run. It was a team who was never competitive. They were 10. They were 12-6 this year against,
11-6 against the spread.
11-6 against the spread. One of the worst, if not the worst, constructed roster in football. They went 11-6 against the spread. That's fucking remarkable.
One of the worst. The Giants are arguably the worst constructed anything in football.
Maybe. I think the Giants have a better roster than Detroit. I think maybe Houston has a worse roster than Detroit. But either way, bottom three roster, it's still, and to be that successful and be that competitive against Rams playoffs, Vikings, near miss, they beat them. The Ravens, near miss, and to be able to, that comeback against the Niners in week 1, Dan Campbell found the recipe. Whether it works long term, it doesn't matter. But for this year, remarkable.
Fair enough. All right. Fantasy Rookie of the Year. And your nominees are Najee Harris, running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver, Miami Dolphins. Mac Jones, quarterback, New England Patriots. Jamar Chase, wide receiver, Cincinnati Bengals. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, Detroit Lions. My winner for this one is Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of the Cincinnati Bengals. He fell off a little bit mid-season, but you had some absolute blow-up games out of Jamar Chase. He is immediately in the conversation for, for top 2, basically, dynasty wide receivers. It's a guy that didn't get. There were some concerns out of training camp based on some things he said, more so than anything. But, this is a guy that showed huge upside in his first year, huge touchdown potential. There were definitely some weeks that he disappeared. But the upside made you fall in love with him. Yards per reception was there. Proven to be a deep threat. Proved to be the real deal. Caught 81 balls on 128 targets, 18 yards per reception, 13 touchdowns. Absolutely incredible rookie season for Ja'Marr Chase. Once again, setting the standard higher for wide receivers in the expectation that, like running backs, they produce early and they produce often.
This is between him and Jefferson, we're going to have, and then, with St. Brown and a bit of Waddle, we're going to have a lot of higher expectations for rookie receivers that may end up kind of going the way of how quarterbacks have gone for this year. I wanted to pick Chase, and I could have picked him, but I feel like the other side of this coin is Nadja Harris. I think these are the only 2 real clear answers. You can definitely pin a picture for Waddle, but for Nadja Harris, 9 games over 100 total yards. He was a massive consistency for fantasy from a running back position that yielded a lot of inconsistency from his top, from the top of the ADP, charts, the top guys that were being drafted. The same way that Chase did the same thing for wide receiver. They both paid off on value where many believed they were going too high. And again, it just further points to why are we ignoring a Pittsburgh team with Mike Tomlin through multiple OCs when they draft a running back that they like, they're going to use them. Nadja Harris fit that billing. It was, a great year, right? You can talk about efficiencies and all that to like from a year-to-year standpoint. It's all about volume. And there's no other running back that will achieve what he will hit the heights that he'll hit as long as he stays healthy. And it's 3 straight years of this hyper usage of being so productive. So, Chase is, I think, the easy answer, but I think Najee also deserves a lot of credit for what he was able to achieve at the cost that he was significantly higher cost than what Chase was.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And Harris was the other guy that was really, truly in the running for me. The other 3 guys that I just kind of wanted to give nods to. Mac Jones performed all season at what everybody knew his floor would be, which you normally don't see. When we're evaluating rookie talent, this is a guy's floor. You don't necessarily expect them to be there year 1. It's 4 years in. If this is where the guy consistently performs, that's the minimum expectations we had, is what that means.
I still think he exceeded expectations.
I think that he performed at what I thought his long-term floor would be in year 1. If he continued this for the rest of his career, I would look at it and say Mac Jones is a league average or a league slightly above average quarterback. The one concern to me is that this is the fantasy rookie of the year, not the NFL rookie of the year.
Absolutely.
And he's a much better NFL quarterback than he was for fantasy. And Amon-Ra St. Brown down the stretch after Hawkinson went out and he truly got an opportunity to take on some volume, just absolutely went on a tear. He was a guy that, if you were playing him, you picked him up on waivers and were playing him, was absolutely a league winner over the last 4 weeks. A guy that, comes out of nowhere and produces multiple 100-yard games. It's a guy that we looked at and said that, he's probably going to be a slot guy and a complementary piece. He functioned as a 1 at the end of the year. Granted, on a team that was throwing a lot, that had a ton of injuries and things like that, but he did function as a 1, so just a nod to him. But the guy that I really want to talk about here is Jalen Waddle. In honorable mentions. Not quite the upside of Chase, and a lot of that has to do with how he was being targeted. This is somebody that was near the bottom, really, in his target depth, basically. 103rd in average target distance, just 10 deep targets for a guy that runs with 4.3 speed. Everything pointed to a scheme issue from Waddle, to where if he had been getting deeper targets, this is a guy we could have been talking about up there with Ja'Marr Chase. 104 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. Usage really, he proved he could perform at the intermediate to deep levels, but that's just not how they used him primarily. Top 10 in catch rate and true catch rate, 18th in target separation, which is very, very respectable for a rookie. Very respectable drop rate, 10th in yards after the catch. A lot of potential here for Jalen Waddle going forward and for him to build on, especially with the scheme change that utilizes him more in the intermediate to deep part of the field instead of around the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, so think of a hyper-athletic Jarvis Landry.
Right.
I mean, if you look back at both of their rookie season numbers, it's nearly identical in terms of production, but their usage is very much similar.
And I think that's a misuse of Jalen Waddle.
No, I agree. Great. I mean, it's great. I mean, you want to see it because you want to hit him reach his ceiling, but
right.
It's from where the team is, and I guess we'll see post Brian Flores and the staff there, but
yes,
yeah, he's a great year for Waddle.
All right, move on.
Yeah.
All right, the what the fuck did I just watch or read moment of the year? Your nominees are Joe Judge's existence, Antonio Brown's mid-game walkout, just the Urban Meyer saga in general, or Henry Ruggs' defense attorney's statement that it's really the fire department's fault they didn't get there sooner.
I forgot, when you put that, I'm like, what? And then
it clicked.
I completely forgot. I'm just like, my God, that's right.
We have a unanimous decision here. The Urban Meyer saga is the unanimous winner of the what the fuck did I just watch and read? Because it went from everything to hee ha ha, he's grinding on hee ha ha, he's cheating on his wife. Hee ha, he's grinding on somebody.
Yeah.
To holy shit, he kicked a kicker. And told his coordinators they were essentially useless and accomplished nothing. Yeah, that whole thing led to multiple what the fuck moments, and definitely the saga of the season. I think that the single biggest what the fuck moment was Antonio Brown.
Oh yeah, easily.
But the cumulative holy hell, multiple what the fuck moments Urban Meyer gave us is what makes this my choice.
And just the fact that everyone predicted him to flame out in glorious faction. And still,
it was better than we all could have imagined.
It was better than we all could have imagined. It's absolutely right.
By the way, I'm now drinking bourbon, Makers 101.
There you go. I'm still grinding through the rest of this Bourbon County.
Because they have a splash more of robust porter. All right. Moving on, the mid-game Antonio Brown disappearing act of the year. So, not mid-game disappearance, but just disappearing acts this year. The nominees are the Cleveland Browns, Allen Robinson, rookie quarterbacks as a whole, Deshaun Watson's sexual assault allegations, and the Broncos offense. Dan, why don't you go ahead first? Before I give mine.
I had so many different responses to this. Just how it's shaped up.
There's a lot of them.
Disappointing players based on ADP. Kind of the team disappointments, offensive side disappointments. The total nod to Deshaun Watson's struggles. I saw that, I laughed. I thought about putting the same, but I wanted to keep it kind of
serious?
Still based around fantasy, somewhat serious. Rookie QBs was my pick, and I went with the Broncos receiving core. This also included tight ends because you had productions from the running back. Then I switched it to rookie QBs, and I wanted to mainly focus on. We got spoiled from Baker and Lamar Jackson in 18 to Kyler Murray in 19 to now really Justin Herbert this past season, and the expectations were skyrocketed, sky high. Trey Lance, at a point in time was going higher than Jalen Hurts. He wasn't named a starter. Trevor Lawrence was going higher than I think Matthew Stafford in a lot of leagues because it's Trevor Lawrence. You saw Justin Fields get drafted in single QB leagues for absolutely no reason. Granted, we were so trying to chase the Justin Herbert, the Kyler Murrays, and the Bakers, Lamar Jacksons of the world throughout their rookie season. It was really in reality where Mac Jones, who was in the best situation, Davis Mills, who came out of nowhere effectively, were your best rookie QBs, and they were your fifth and sixth draft, the fifth and eighth drafted quarterbacks in the NFL draft. And just kind of the shitstorm that Trevor Lawrence was, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, his struggles throughout the year, and Trey Lance could never really surpass through injuries and then getting COVID. Jimmy Garoppolo, despite what fans may have wanted. So I wanted to paint the picture for rookie quarterbacks and really just remind people this is kind of the expectations for most rookies is what we got this year.
Yeah.
And how
bad every now and again.
Yeah, just how bad they may have looked. Trevor Lawrence was still a top 5 in money throws. Like the guy, there's so much, and just one of the worst situations a quarterback can see. Justin Fields and Zach Wilson are kind of in the same boat, just not to that degree. So there's still a lot of risk, for these guys in the long term, and if they'll pan out. But you can't expect what we got last year from Herbert and even Burrow before he, tore his ACL.
For sure. All right. Mine was Deshaun Watson's sexual assault allegations.
The most obvious answer.
And the reason I say this is this. 22 sexual assault allegations don't just go away because the NFL season starts when there's sustenance to it. I've been on if you listened leading up to the season, there's no surprise that I'm on this train. The timing of this was too fucking weird.
Yeah.
And way too out of nowhere, too out there, too high volume. There was too much just off about this that makes me think that there's not something at foot that's fucked up. I honestly think if I put on my full tinfoil hat, that the Texans are behind this somehow. As he's requesting trades, trying to get his ass out of town, they tank his trade value and then sit him on the bench just as a fuck you to him. But 22 allegations is nothing that anybody else can talk about throughout the offseason. And then there's no word on an NFL investigation. All of a sudden, the allegations kind of stop. There's no words on proceedings, really no words on criminal investigation, no word on punishment from the NFL. The Texans sit him, which is a story the first 2 weeks, and then just do it the rest of the season without so much as a mention of it, for the most part. Where did it go? Because in today's society, that doesn't just disappear. Yeah. So where did it go? You heard the train rumors come up every now and again, but the heat that this had for it to just die off because the season started. We'll see more of it this offseason, but that's the reason it's a disappearing act, because it completely died. And for something that large, for no action, no comment from the NFL, no action, no comment from the two attorneys for the majority of the season, no action, no comment from the media. In today's world, with everything that goes on around sexual assault, a little weird. Allen Robinson obviously fell out the plan at the Cleveland Browns regressed, and the Broncos offense is a Teddy Bridgewater magical act. So,
a whole lot of everything.
Yeah.
For that Denver team. Browns, obviously, not hard to see why.
All right, underdrafted league winner, the steal of the year. Your nominees are Jalen Waddle, Deebo Samuel, Leonard Fournette, and Cooper Kupp. My pick on this one is Deebo Samuel. Cooper Kupp was in the running for this, but the deeper cut is the guy you drafted in the 8th or the 9th round, finishing as the 3, and the guy you drafted in the 4th round, finishing as the wide receiver 1. It's a bigger jump, and I think part of Deebo Samuel's fall is everybody that was blinded by Brandon Ayuk when Deebo missed some time hurt last year and forgot how good Deebo Samuel actually is. But then what you didn't predict was the way that he folded into the running game as well, and the way that he would be used in multiple facets of the game, not just as a top-end wide receiver. And every week, whether it was as a running back, as a wide receiver, through the rushing game, through the air, he's helping his team, he's providing value, and he's really creating this new role for wide receivers that I don't know that anybody other than him, A.J. Brown, and maybe DK Metcalf could pull off, because they're built like brick shit houses with that level of athleticism.
Visca, if he could stay healthy,
also
and if he
in the
was
right
more
scheme.
Talented. And then Cordero Patterson
Who's
was
kind of
that
their
role for
OG
the Falcons.
Patterson's kind of the OG of this, though. The Vikings used him in that way, and so did the Bears. But
yeah, I mean, you had Tyreek Hill in his first year with the Chiefs. Having Austin, I think, a little bit, even with the Rams early on, they kind of used him, and then he kind of fell into that.
There's also a reason why Austin wasn't as successful as this, though, and I think it's just
small too.
The pure size-speed combo. People ask why couldn't Mecole Hardman be used in a role like this? Well, he's not built like a brick shithouse to operate around the line of scrimmage the same way Deebo is. Just like Deebo is not built to burn people deep like Hardman is. I mean, they're just different types of receiver. And I think what we saw here, the NFL is a copycat league. There's going to be people trying to grab on to receivers they want to use in a way that, San Francisco used Deebo Samuel. And it's not in a way that we haven't seen receivers used. It's in a way we haven't seen receivers of that size used. Yeah,
and just it played hand in hand with the running back injuries that they were dealing with. The fact that they recognized Ayuk out of the doghouse, was kind of coming back to where he was his rookie season, and George Kittle being utilized more. It was all three of these pass catchers, all three of these dominant yak players. They needed to create ways to maximize their potential, and Deebo as a better, Cordero Patterson, a more productive Cordero Patterson, really hit home with that, right? He had that stretch where I think San Francisco got a little too cute with him as a runner. He was so productive and so finished well because he scored touchdowns.
They had to go back to using him a bit more.
I mean, he had 3 straight games with 1 catch from weeks 11 through 14, pivotal parts of your fantasy season. 7 targets, 3 catches.
But he was still fun. Because
he was still great because he's
running
and scored. And then you got to see him bounce back to where, okay, you should probably use him as a traditional receiver, but factor in elements. Curtis Samuel as well.
That was really when Elijah Mitchell came back. And Samuel, again, kind of more Tavon Austin than what Deebo is. It's just, being built like a brick shithouse. But, you're right. There was a little bit of a fade there, but he was getting it done rushing production. If something wasn't working, the one guarantee you had of San Francisco is that Deebo was going to find his way involved. And to go from being drafted in the 8th or the 9th round to finishing as a wide receiver 3, it's harder to find better value in your draft than that.
It is. That is the absolute, based on this question would be the right answer. What Cooper Kupp did and where he finished, a points per game finish, how close he was to breaking two actual NFL records, and still being around 4. Yes, round 4 doesn't look as great as round 8, round 9. Cooper Kupp was also being disrespected by another wide receiver on his team that went a half a round earlier. Now, granted, it wasn't the extreme parallels of difference. Ayuk was a 5th and 6th round pick. Deebo 8 and 9. Robert Woods was more of a mid-3rd. Kupp was more of a mid-4th.
He also had
sometimes 5th.
Deeper file of getting it done than what Ayuk had too. So you could justify it a little more.
Yeah, but if Kupp if he didn't finish with nearly 5 more points per game than Deebo, this wouldn't be a conversation, but from what Cup was and the fact that he single-handedly, my team included, for one of my leagues, carried me to a championship with his massive consistency. And, this will allude to our MVP voting for fantasy this year. It's still, even as a round 4, the dominance of what Cup did.
Yeah.
From a week to week, his lowest scoring week, still double-digit points in PPR, all the way back in week 4 to multiple 30-point weeks. And even during the fantasy playoffs, he was I think he finished as a 2. And his worst week was against Minnesota, and that's because he didn't score a touchdown. He still got you over 10 catches and 100 yards. It was what we got from Michael Thomas from a few years ago. It's remarkable from where you drafted him, even 3 rounds after the first round.
Yep. There was not a dud week for Cooper Kupp. And I looked at Kupp hard because I knew he was going below Woods, and the Woods injury undoubtedly probably helped us a little bit.
Not really. Kupp had 9 touchdowns before Woods even got hurt.
Before Woods got hurt, from the receiving volume though, because Woods was starting to grab a bit more target volume.
Yeah,
but then you had Beckham come in, so it's not a huge swing. Look, I'm a giant Cooper Kupp fan, and to go from round 4 to easily the wide receiver 1, and by the distance he was the wide receiver 1, I think is absolutely deserving here as well.
Yeah.
All right, other honorable mentions here. Leonard Fournette was going as a 9th round pick. I think he finished his RB7.
He was top. Yeah, he was in the bottom RB1 because of his got hurt towards the end of the year.
Right, and then Jalen Waddle we already talked about. He finished his top 15. So,
yep.
All right. He's not dead yet. Old man of the year. Your nominees are Melvin Gordon, running back 23. Zach Ertz, tight end 5. Tom Brady, quarterback 3 at 44 years old. And Aaron Rodgers, the QB 6. And we're unanimous. We're unanimous here on Tom Brady as the quarterback 3 at 44 years old.
I almost pegged Zach Ertz, but then I remember tight ends.
Big dead beginning of the season, but tight end 5 is really no different than tight end 10. So
Tom Brady just continues to defy all that is known for just football players in general. You and I have been able to witness his existence in football. We're never going to find a player like Brady, I think, ever again. Just and to be this, productive. This puts even Favre's best year at 40 years old, 39 years old with the Vikings to shame, and just the continued production with on and off injuries. Antonio Brown, Gronk, Godwin, Evans, the slew of running backs. You're not slew, but more so Jones and Fournette kind of battling early on. And while Brady does look more so this year than even last year, that he's starting to kind of see it start to end, he still finished as a QB3 and was more hyper efficient in his own ways. And it's remarkable just watching it, where most people are trying to draft, Konami code quarterbacks. You have old man Brady basically becoming a top 3 quarterback because you don't give a fuck.
What area of Russia did you tweet this show at?
Dude, I have no clue what the fuck. I don't know what they're saying. I'm assuming it's something bad. It's not going to be flake.
It looks like somebody just head butted a keyboard.
But it always starts with the same 3 letters. So, it's like, I don't fucking know. Whatever.
I don't know. Anyway, Tom Brady, you said it better than anybody else could have. The honorable mention here, I think the only one that deserves mention is probably Aaron Rodgers, who also continues to perform at a high level with less around him. So that would be the only other one that was really in contention here. Melvin Gordon was fine. He's old for a running back at 28, but he's not super old yet. And Ertz, like you mentioned, the tight end 5 looks good when you call it the tight end 5. When you actually look at the point separation, that could have easily been tight end 12. So,
yeah,
it's not like you went
between
out there and
between him and AJ Green, it was really just old man Cardinals.
Yeah.
Getting it done in the absence of Hopkins.
Everybody retires in Arizona.
Yeah, right.
Waiver pickup of the year. Your nominees are Deebo Samuel, the wide receiver 3, 8th or 9th round pick, so maybe not a waiver pickup, probably some shallower leagues. James Conner, running back 5, definitely was on waivers at the beginning of the year. Michael Pittman, wide receiver 17, definitely in some shallower leagues, could have been on waivers. Cordero Patterson, the running back 9. Amon-Ra St. Brown finished as the wide receiver 20. Hunter Renfro, the wide receiver 10. And then Elijah Mitchell. And I think you started last time. I'll start this time. My winner is Hunter Renfro, the wide receiver 10. Renfro's a guy that I preach about every year, or the type of guy I preach about every year that you want to have on your roster. And luckily, I had him on a lot of rosters this year. And it's because if you were to catch an injury or somebody getting hurt, you want somebody that's going to come in and not dudge you while you figure that out. Through bye weeks, you need that piece to plug in. So he's a top of bench guy most weeks. Well, then Darren Waller gets hurt. And, Hunter Renfro puts up some solid weeks with a little bit more passing volume for the Raiders. And Darren Waller gets hurt, and all of that volume starts to go Hunter Renfro's way. And he chose a different range of upside. You can't cover the guy. He's a heady player, a hell of a runs some of the craziest routes that I've ever seen to separate, use other players' momentum against them. His agility, which is his best athletic trait, he uses better than anybody else. He comes in and finishes as a wide receiver 10, based on increased volume, based on that ability to be smart about how he plays and create that type of separation, dissonance, and chaos. So Hunter Renfro is my waiver wire pickup of the year. You got a top 10 wide receiver either late in your draft or free out of him. And, even on the stretch, he did have one bad week in the playoffs. But other than that, he's very solid and, a larger reason why you're there.
Yeah.
And more touchdown upside this year than in years past. With 9.
It definitely didn't hurt when Darren Waller went down. But our picks, and I'll get to mine here in a second, are the true answers to this category. I get where we're going with Pittman, Deebo, and Connor. All 3 of them were drafted high single digits or double digit rounds. Mm-hmm. They were all within that pick 85 to 100 range.
And some of them might have been dropped. But, I mean, for guys that were truly for sure on waivers.
Yeah, and you see waiver pickup of the year. This doesn't stem to where you picked them up. It doesn't just stem to what they did overall as a year. But for Amon-Ra St. Brown, for what you got from him when you picked him up, 6 weeks from weeks, and he showed production mid-season even, where he had a couple of 8-target games that led to seeing the potential if he got that opportunity. Yes, it took injuries to Quintez Cephas, to to TJ Hawkinson, to Swift for the 2 big names, to Khalif Freeman, to being in and out with COVID, for the Lions to truly invest into the target volume they give to St. Brown. But from what he did from week 13 against the Vikings on was remarkable. His playoff run, weeks 15 through 17, the wide receiver 1, outscoring our favorites in Cup and Samuel during that stretch. And he had 2 weeks. So this wasn't just he blew up in the playoffs. This was, he had 3 weeks prior to the playoffs starting. Maybe 4 weeks prior, because obviously if you count week 18, so 2 weeks prior, even you had time to truly know what you had in Amon-Ra St. Brown during that stretch, and paying off at the most pivotal time. It's the reason why. So Renfro was what Amon-Ra was for the playoffs, is what Renfro was during the mid part of the season, where it was just consistency. And a great pick for that. Elijah Mitchell, when he was healthy, showed why he was a better fit for that Niners running game than Trey Sermon was. And Patterson was basically the RB1 or a top 3 running back for the majority of the early part of the season. It wasn't until Atlanta started to fuck around with his usage and using him less as a receiver, where his numbers started to tail off. I'll give one more audible mention. That's probably it's that Devonta Freeman. The same. He wasn't as highly prolific as Elijah Mitchell was towards that mid part of the season.
He
but
carried me to a playoff position.
Yeah, he helped a lot of teams who lost a lot of your top tier running backs kind of fill that RB2 slot with confidence.
He didn't carry me. He prevented the floor from falling out when that happened.
He was basically lesser Mitchell, lesser Fournette, but he did it for just as long until Murray came back. So it's. I think our 2 picks are hands down the 2 correct.
I agree with that, and the reason it wasn't Patterson, who was an early season pickup, was because of how he tailed off throughout the season. The reason it wasn't Mitchell, who was an early pickup, was because of the injury issues throughout the season. If you'd gotten a full season of productivity out of either of them, I think that's the answer. But I completely agree with St. Brown, and not what he did, but when he did it. Because if you got him late, especially as COVID is starting to throw some shit into haywire in sideways and all of that, then you're very happy with that.
Yep.
All right. Fantasy Comeback Player of the Year. Nominees for this one are Dak Prescott, Deebo Samuel, Joe Burrow, James Conner. And really 3 of the 4 I don't think you could have gone wrong with. But who'd you pick?
So I went with what I thought was the absolute clear answer after I did just a minimal amount of research, and that's just because of how many games Deebo actually missed in 2020. Ayuk's rookie year, breakout year in his own right. Deebo on the same path, right? Broke out as a rookie in 2019. Deebo played in a total of 7 games in 2020. And in 2 of those games, he left early. Week 4, he got banged up, left early. In week 14 was when he hurt himself, was done for the year. Missed games in between. And we know what he did this year, right? We don't need to rehash what his production was, where he finished at, and the consistency and where he was. And while Dak and Burrow will likely be the NFL Comeback Player of the Year for the actual football, because quarterback is heavily skewed, but Deebo provided you from a fantasy standpoint, from being the late round darling, from being the true comeback, and the defining what that Niners offense was. Once it became clear to me that one became an easy answer. It was, a tier 1 through 3 of his own right, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with the Deebo answer. I went Joe Burrow. And I think that it was not just the ACL tear, but the year 1 to year 2 jump. And
the dominance that he
the
had
dominance
in the
and some of the
runs,
massive upside that he had down the stretch. I mean, it's not just he came back and jumped back onto the track he was on. He came back, jumped back on the track he was on, and then took it to another level. So, for Joe Burrow to come off of that injury, for quarterbacks, you wonder how are they going to take hits. We felt like since he could have done more to address the offensive line for him, how are they going to stand in the pocket? And there were some concerns with that in training camp. What was his mobility going to be? What was his mentality going to be? And, he got used to it, went close to 5,000 yards on just 520 attempts. That is a huge, huge, huge deep ball success rate. Below 550 attempts, you don't expect him to be sniffing 4,500 yards. But he did. 70.4% completion rate. That's, first off, absolutely not sustainable. But unless you're Drew Brees. But
or Kirk Cousins, and those
Yeah.
are offenses geared to to bring out that efficiency.
Right. So when you're, hitting deep, but also hitting on a high completion percentage, dude took 51 sacks. I mean, if you're scared to stand in the pocket, that's a hard thing to do. But I just think the poise that he showed, and then, some of the numbers he was able to put up, like, this is Josh Allen's year 3, right? To where even if he regresses a little bit, you're still okay. That's what Joe Burrow did. Back-to-back 4-touchdown performances. He went the last 4 weeks without throwing a pick. Had a very solid stretch at the beginning of the season as well. A little bit struggles there in the middle. But, it's hard to turn a blind eye to what he did. And I like last one, I think that these are the two absolute right answers.
Yeah.
For, Debo, who could have lost his job while he was out to Ayuk, given what he had. And Burrow, who, still rookie year, right? To come back and do what they did. I think that's absolutely right. Not James Conner, not just, being banged up most of last year, but going to a new team and being able to perform as he did. And then Dak Prescott coming back and just kind of picking up where he left off.
Yeah. Burrow is still a great answer. If it wasn't for, honestly, and this is no disrespect to Burrow at all, because what he did this year was absolutely incredible. The last 2 weeks, the most pivotal 2 weeks in your fantasy leagues, is where he had his 2 best games and what is considered the greatest 2-game stretch in fantasy QB history. Nearly 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, back-to-back QB1 weeks in your 2 most important weeks if you made the playoffs. And unfortunately, your wild card week, he dud you. Sure, points 12.8, but QB 17. Burrow definitely. I think Burrow wins. I think Burrow, nice
Bottle kill.
I think Burrow definitely deserves the award in the actual NFL, but definitely a good mention. It's having the offensive weapons he has. It makes it for a very exciting future for Bengals fans and for people who have these players in the Dynasty roster.
All right. Keeping her moving. Heartbreaking injury of the year. Your nominees are DeAndre Hopkins, hamstring. Pretty sure it was a hamstring.
Was it? That was foot.
It
was foot injury. It was, because I remember being concerned because big guy with a foot injury.
I'll look it up. Earlier.
Yeah.
I was looking. Yeah, you look it up because I'm talking.
Yeah, foot injury. It was.
Was it? It was a hamstring right before that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he broke his foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley, mental health. That is an injury.
Yes.
James Robinson, Achilles. J.K. Dobbins, ACL. Christian McCaffrey, I don't even remember what he hurt.
Literally everything.
Everything. That's kind of what
it felt like. It
felt like everything.
Everything.
Derrick Henry, foot, and I know he's back now, but he missed the rest of the fantasy football season.
Yeah.
Robert Woods, ACL. And then Saquon Barkley with the midseason ankle injury. I'm
going to throw in Akers with Dobbins there as well.
Oh, yeah, Akers. And you can even make a case for Gus Bradley, too, because if Dobbins went out, Bradley became premium.
Gus Edwards?
Yeah, Gus Bradley.
Ravens running backs. And even kind of Rams running backs, because, Darrell Henderson, halfway point of the season. Yeah.
Anyway, my pick was Derrick Henry. Henry was easily the running back one. He was on his way to carrying a bunch of teams to fantasy titles, one of mine included. This is a difference maker, right? You can build a team top to bottom that's very, very good, but there are going to be weird weeks, like I think it was week 15 this year, week 14, week 15, the one where everybody just kind of dudded.
Yeah.
It was week 14 because it was the first week it was week 15, first week of the playoffs, where everybody just kind of dudded out. And that's when you need your superstars to be able to carry a team. So Derrick Henry is that type of superstar that you spent a top 4 pick on your roster. It hurt his foot and missed the rest of the year. That to me is the heartbreak injury of the year. It's not like CMC, whose capital was already down a bit coming off of last year. Also having injury issues. That's not a shot at, spoilers, your pick. That's just the reason that it was Henry over CMC or Barkley for me, is that those two have injury history. They're coming off of injuries, so you already kind of factor that into your draft capital, whereas Derrick Henry, you didn't.
Well, for Barkley, it did. CMC was so widely considered the RB1. So you're definitely right. There was people that avoided.
He's the only one that had pause on CMC?
People, I mean, as a community, as a mock drafting community, what CMC provides in the way that Devontae Adams does for the wide receiver position, what Cooper Kupp did this year, what Michael Thomas did a couple years ago, there is no running back that has CMC's ceiling. And we saw glimpses of that weeks 1 and 2, pre-injury, before he hurt himself against Houston in week 3. RB1 finish, RB3. He was the RB1 in week 1, the RB3 in week 2. Both 20-point finishes. In games that he played over 50% of the snaps, no less than 24 points. It's what CMC provides, and the glimpses you got to see when he was healthy is why he, even in 2022, there's still people talking about McCaffrey as a 101 pick. People that don't allow running back injuries to affect their redraft drafting. This isn't Dynasty, this is redraft, where the running back positions, the injury history for just running backs in general, is a damn near 50-50 flip on whether or not your guy that gets drafted gets hurt, your running back that does. Mm-hmm. And this year was especially highlighted just because all the top guys, minus a couple, kept getting injured. And I definitely agree with Henry. Henry would have been my easy pick. Kelvin Ridley, just because of we need to highlight mental health as important as it is.
Yeah, and Ridley, a lot of people were expecting with Jones gone to pick up a lot of that volume, and really up to that point, it hadn't necessarily panned out. He had been okay, but
who knows how much of that mental health contributed to
right?
Maybe his focus not being there, and hearing what we're hearing now, and that it looks like Ridley's relationship with Atlanta is fractured, which really makes me think.
What was going on in between those two walls?
Between them, I believe he lost a family member. Was it, I think, this year or last year? So I think it may have been his brother.
Yeah.
It sounds like Atlanta did him dirty. And that's no pun intended. That truly hurts me, because at this point, you would feel like Ridley would want to come back because the relationship is strengthened, but the fact that it's fractured means Atlanta probably did something to not make him want to come back. And
you know what? If that's the case, I hope he lands elsewhere and is a comeback player of the year candidate. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, there's no player that I'm, and we have at times have kind of, I will not say shit on.
We haven't ever shit on Ridley. We were just, I think that draft season in particular, a little bit more realistic about what Ridley could be than what a lot of people were being.
We were never as high on Ridley as some people in this community.
That's not to say that we were low. We just thought he was more of a floor guy than a boom guy. And he was going to have his chance to prove us wrong this year and didn't get it. So I'm not going to say it didn't happen, didn't get it. It was taken from him.
Who knows if before he excused himself from the game because his health is more important, his mental health is more important than his football career. So I am now rooting for him 1,000, 2,000, 10,000%. I hope he leaves Atlanta because it sounds like that relationship is broken. And he deserves a spot on this. He would have been my pick. I decided to pivot to McCaffrey from a pure fantasy standpoint. Just him and Henry are stand out for their own reasons, but McCaffrey, with how we do a lot of our scoring in leagues overall, is just there's no one with his ceiling. So it was an easy pick for that. But there's a lot of guys that could fit this billing, from Hopkins James Robinson finally got going after Urban Meyer was fucking shit canned, to the loss of our two 2020 darling running backs and Dobbins and Akers, to Barkley, who's almost like a lesser CMC, but now he's kind of free from the Joe Judge and Giants situation. So it feels like next year we're going to get value at running back. Everyone's going to buy into the zero RB because of what happened. And it feels like running backs are going to be a value next year.
All right. Moving on. From out of nowhere, rookie or breakout that no one saw coming. I'm smiling because I'm going to argue with yours. Not because of I disagree with the recognition, because I disagree that no one saw it coming. More on that in a minute.
Well, I mean,
no. You got to wait till we get there. We're not there
that's
yet.
Fine. That's fine.
It's coming.
I get to finally be on the right side of this argument.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is I don't know if you'll be on the right side of this or not. Ladies and gentlemen, there is going to be a classic Dan and Chris spend way too long debating something that ultimately doesn't matter type of discussion.
From a player they both like.
From a player we both like that's about to come up. Anyway, from out of nowhere, rookie or breakout that nobody saw coming. Your nominees are Cooper Kupp, Elijah Mitchell, Rashad Penny, Davis Mills, Deebo Samuel, and Hunter Renfro. And I know I went first last time. I'm going to go first this time so I can get it out of the way.
I feel like we can still make the same argument even for you. But yes, go on.
No, the argument for me, Elijah Mitchell was a undrafted rookie, and it's a level of performance that you didn't have an indicator to, right? This isn't a guy that came out with, highly touted. It's not anybody that – it's like Phillip Lindsay. It's not anybody that anybody was on, mostly because of age. I mean, the athletic profile was there for Mitchell, but the age wasn't there.
I think it was combined with and this pays in part to how small our community is to the gram spectrum of the fantasy as a whole.
Right.
There's a lot of people who dislike Trey Sermon, a lot of people who love Mitchell, and a lot of people thought that Mitchell was a better fit from day one. Mm-hmm. Your pick is definitely easily choosable over mine. I just wanted to paint that broader picture.
We're gonna get there. Sermon or Mitchell was at a tier that I had where I had like Khalil Herbert also, which are just guys that were coming out at close to age 24, which is 2 years older than you want to see your running backs coming out at from a dynasty ranking perspective, that had the talent to actually flash and do it. And Herbert did it when Montgomery was hurt. Mitchell did it based on really the Mostert injury and then the Jeff Wilson injury. I think early in the season is what gave him the opportunity, and then he held it over Jeff Wilson because of how he performed early on. But even with people not liking Trey Sermon, then you think it's Trey Sermon because he went drafted, and then you you have the injury to Mostert, and you lose Jeff Wilson, and then you end up kind of at this point. Sorry, I said he was undrafted. He was a 6th-round pick. But
same difference.
So you figure that the draft capital in Sermon's going to win out there. That's what everyone tells us, right? Yeah. It doesn't. You figure the contract, because they'd signed Mostert, is going to win out there. He gets hurt. Then Jeff Wilson gets hurt, who's got experience and is a veteran, is likely going to get early.
He was already hurt before
early work.
But yeah.
And here comes Elijah Mitchell onto the scene, and is ahead of Trey Sermon and very productive. And to me, that's just, you could like Sermon as a prospect, and that's fine. I see it from the athletic profile. I see why you would, but it's hard for me to say that you thought this was going to be the case. You're hoping based on the athletic profile.
Well, no one saw Mitchell hit the heights that he hit And then the same thing with my player. Right. At least, my player did it.
It's a trajectory argument that I'm going to make on your player because of the rookie season. That's what I'm going to make. Go ahead, and then I'll jump in. I don't think you're going to disagree with me as much as you think you will.
What, on Debo, or
Yeah,
are we still want to talk about Mitchell?
No, on Debo. I want you to talk about Debo. And
well, Debo's was the fact that again, picking the same player. I didn't want to pick Debo in this spot because I already picked him 2 times. Davis Mills, when I saw his name, it was like, that makes a lot of sense. Hunter Renfro is kind of in the same spectrum as Debo, as a guy that has performed when he has already performed in his career, but then reached the heights due to injury. Debo's was because he was better. I don't think people saw Debo as a top 3 finish receiver. I don't think people saw Debo as the wide receiver 2 alongside Cooper Kupp for the early stretch of the season. That's because of Brandon Ayuk. That's because of George Kittle, and the fact that many people believe Debo was on the back burner because of it. Him being productive in his freshman or in his rookie season is definitely a reason why you can get paused at this point, because he kind of already broke out. But him getting hurt, being forgotten about, and Ayuk breaking out in his rookie season, people jumped to that conclusion. And I will not hide behind the fact that I was in the same way. That's why I put Debo in the spot. No one saw Debo breaking out the way that Cooper Kupp did, who's an honorable mention, to where he finished in the same light as Debo hitting that spot. Maybe a breakout could come. Not a top 5, a top 3 wide receiver finish. I don't think that was ever in the realm of anybody's projection possibility. I also love Rashad Penny as a call out too.
Yeah, the Rashad Penny call out was based on, hurt and kind of underperformance early on. Cooper Kupp was based on, you kind of thought he was already performing and what he was going to be.
It's even Golden Tate. It was the Golden Tate thing, but even then, people never thought that.
Right.
The Breakfast Club statement from Kupp is now the reason why he's as dominant as he was.
For Deebo Samuel, my only argument against this was going to be that no one saw it coming, because I was always a believer in that Deebo Samuel, maybe not break out to that level, but was going to be the most productive wide receiver on that team. I was never bought into the, and you know this, I was never.
I know. Oh no, I know.
Never bought into the Brandon Ayuk hype. Now, did I see wide receiver 3? No, I'd be lying if I sit there and said I meant that. Did I see potential for wide receiver 1? Like a wide receiver 1, not the wide.
You may be the only person. I know people that were very high that saw a lot of potential, but wide receiver 1 was, even in conversation, was tough because of the 49er offense and then just distribution of targets.
Well, for me, it was what he had kind of already done in that offense, what he had flashed in that offense. And, him coming back, and, Ayuk was a guy that, you know this with me too. I will change takes on players, right?
Yeah, you've gotten a lot. You and I have both grown heavier into that than what we were when we first started.
But it's still going to take more than a couple of splash games for me to change my take on players. And Ayuk was in and out of the lineup and didn't really give me, in my opinion, enough to change what my initial draft take on with him was, which was that he shouldn't have been drafted that high. He's not a guy that registered for me, and I don't know why they did it. So I just believed in Debo more than I believed in Ayuk. Believed in the talent a bit more than I believed in Ayuk. I believed in the fact that there could really only be one kind of consistent performer there. And while Ayuk had some nice weeks and was definitely serviceable, the consistent high performer ended up being Debo. And to me, it was really, which guy were you betting on being that one guy? So the only thing I take is exception to is no one, and I'm only taking exception to that so I can victory lap this a little bit.
I'll say this. George Kittle would have been my answer for me.
Yeah.
And that was because Kittle was the most productive receiver, the most productive pass catcher, and the fact that all 3 of them play a similar role. They're yak monsters for their position, and all 3 of them kind of operate in the same vein. Is that Shanahan continues to, he maximized the potential out of all 3 of them. Ayuk is probably still the third option in most minds, and they still draw up plays for them. I still agree. Like, I don't think I've changed my opinion on Ayuk as the season progressed on. I just like that he actually produced, but to the levels of how Shanahan got from Debo in this offense, it's still something that no one saw coming. No one. From even being able to survive as a running back more so than a receiver and still produce at a high level. It deserves, again, and I've picked him 3 times. It deserves more praise, just how impressive of a season he had. And if it wasn't for Cooper Kupp, right? If it wasn't for, for what he did, for what Kupp did, Debo would be talked about more.
Yeah. Nope, I can agree with that. All right, the Golden Handcuffs Award. This one's unanimous. There are no other nominees. It's Henry Ruggs.
Sad. Just, we talked about it a lot. We don't need to rehash it, but it's
Golden Handcuffs is stupidest decision leading to an arrest. And some of these have been,
God, who was the Jets guy that did it? Right when he got pulled over, was it the Jets guy?
It
was a couple of years ago, or maybe it was 3 because Nick was still with us.
Oh, yeah.
And he told it was Robbie Anderson. That's right.
It was Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, it was Robbie Anderson when he flirted with the police officer that pulled him over.
I think it was Robbie Anderson, and then I think we had Chad Kelly in one of these for the
Chad Kelly
for the vacuum cleaner incident.
Fuck, it was another Jets tight end too, right? It was pre-Herndon. Was it Kellen Winslow? It wasn't Kellen Winslow.
No, Winslow
Junior
was the one that jerked off on people.
Yeah, that was well before this category evolved. It was another Jets tight end though. It wasn't Herndon. It was the other one that kind of came back and had. It was a Bucs drafted tight end.
I can tell you what we had for 2019, I guess, and 2018. Hold on, let's see.
18 would have been that year because that was Nick's final year, as you know. So I think that one was the
dumbest player conduct went to Antonio Brown in 2019. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Let's see.
What's that tight end's name? God damn it! It was the Bucs tight end.
Wasn't Leggett, was it?
No, it was because he went to the Jets originally. It was the guy that fumbled out of the end zone against the Patriots that year. It was another hyper athletic tight end that never panned out because he kept getting hurt or suspended. He was drafted by the Bucs high, and then he went to the Jets to finish off his career. He also had a ridiculous, arrest that year to go along with Robbie Anderson.
Here we go. This is the first year. Where is it? Have we not always done Golden Handcuffs?
No, we didn't do it in 17.
We didn't do it in 17?
No, maybe it wasn't. Maybe.
Okay, here's
maybe we did.
Here's
maybe he did.
Here's the second annual. Fuelies.
Austin Zafarian Jenkins, that's who it was. ASJ.
Oh, ASJ. That's it.
That was 17. It was 17. I was mistaken. I don't think we did it for that year. I think it was inspired because of that. I thought we didn't do it until 18.
I don't think we actually did. I can't find it anywhere. I don't even have anything in 18. I've got MVP for every position in 18. Waiver wire hero, playoff MVP, overall MVP, biggest disappointment, injury suspension, midseason heartbreak, breakout.
I think we talked about it, but we never actually voted on it. I remember talking about it even before the 18 season started. That was because of the Robbie Anderson news. And Nick made the joke about it and how we're going to start nominating players for the Golden Handcuffs Award throughout the year. And I think the three of us just never talked about it afterwards.
I can't believe we never did it until.
I blame Nick. So.
Yeah. Robbie Anderson arrested apparently shows up in a bunch of stuff. Resisting arrest and obstruction of justice. There it is.
Yeah.
And flirting with a police officer. That May 12th of 2017.
Oh,
There's
man,
a
I
trip
love it.
down memory lane.
Right?
All right. Fantasy MVP. This one's unanimous. There are really only two options you could have here. And they're the two players we're going to talk about. They're Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor. Winner is unanimously Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
For as good as Jonathan Taylor was down the stretch, he had one average game, which is the same in down the stretch, and about 2 or 3 average games to start the season, which is 2 or 3 average games more than Cooper Kupp had. That's essentially the difference. You know, Cooper Kupp every week seemed to be giving you a blow-up week, and, you know, since Calvin Johnson, you have not seen consistent performance like what we got out of Cooper Kupp this year. That is consistently at that high of a little level. I mean, that is a boom week for every other wide receiver, and Cooper Kupp was giving it to you week in and week out.
Yeah, if it wasn't, I think, because I did a hard look at Taylor, again, because I wanted to be different in the spot, and I really wanted to give the light to Taylor in this sense. But when Kupp finished as a top 3 receiver in the playoffs, and Taylor dudded you in the way that, you know, you expected from Taylor, he didn't perform because he didn't get that touchdown or no pass catches in week 16. I think that's what most people remember is Taylor's that it was either week 15 or 16 when all the big players just kind of didn't, you know, pull through. And I think that's what took Taylor away from Kupp's spot. And the fact that Taylor just didn't have, I mean, he had blow up weeks, but he didn't have Kupp levels of just dominance and multiple. I mean, Kupp would have almost 10 touchdowns before like halfway through the season. So, I mean, it's Kupp was always a pick. I tried my hardest to make JT a response. I mean, I think he broke the record for most 100-yard games plus a touchdown. I think he broke a record for the consecutive 100-yard plus total yards and a touchdown for running back. But, I mean, Kupp was otherworldly. So,
Kupp was otherworldly. And you don't get otherworldly in this world often.
No.
It's my sage wisdom for this episode. You have reached the end. Congratulations. There's no prize. You don't win anything. Other than knowing that we'll be off next week. It's next week, right?
Yes, next week I will be on my honeymoon.
Dan will be on his honeymoon, and the only day we could record is Sunday, and we just kind of decided, we'll take a week off. When we come back, we're going to be Dynasty content heavy, and we should be back to having guests on the show. So, you're tired of just listening to us two. Great news. We're going to start to get some other people in. We're going to look at some risers, some fallers, start to look back on some draft classes, and then we'll turn around and start getting you prepped up for the 2022 NFL Draft, as well as mixing in some other fun stuff there. So, Fuelies, as always, caps our 2021 season coverage. Everything else will be an eye towards what you do with Dynasty in the offseason, eye towards next year. We'll keep you up to date on coaching hirings as they happen every week, just like Twitter and every other podcast will, because we're not different and we're not better. There's actually no reason you should listen to us. We're just here.
I mean, we do it in a way where we're not expecting to make profit from it. We drink, we give our advice, and it's the reason why we've still made it into space for as long as we have. So,
thank you guys for tuning in. We will catch you all in 2 weeks.
See ya.
I have no idea how the outro got turned up that loud. My apologies to anybody's eardrums I just broke.